Hey guys, welcome back to another book review video, and today we're going to be talking about the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, a Hunger Games novel by Suzanne Collins. So, as I mentioned, this is a Hunger Games novel. This is the fourth book in the Hunger Games series. This is a prequel to the original trilogy, so the story takes place before the events of the original trilogy, and this book is meant to focus on the primary antagonist of the original trilogy, which is President Snow. This book basically covers President Snow's story, follows him in his teenage years at a point in his life where he is starting to understand more about the Hunger Games and becoming more involved with them. And yeah, so that is basically the premise. If you want to learn more about the premise, just go ahead and pause the video and read the description right here. So go ahead and pause the video if you want to read that. But yeah, that's basically it for this book. That is the overall premise of it. I'll go into a little more detail about it as we go on here. But yeah, so here's the cover. It's a nice green cover. We've got a golden bird and a golden snake here on a golden branch encircling around, and it's an interesting cover. So here's the spine. As you can see, we got the snake right behind the title and the Scholastic Press title and logo. And then here on the back it says, "Ambition will fuel him, competition will drive him, but power has its price." And then we just get a little barcode of information. You get the description in this opening flap here, but I already showed you that. And then on the back you get a little bit of information about Suzanne Collins. Yeah, so a little bit of information about Suzanne Collins and some of the other books, well actually the other books in the Hunger Games trilogy, and just some Scholastic Press information. So yeah, that's basically it for the cover. It's got a nice little dust protector to protect the actual book, but I'll show the actual book towards the end of this video. So getting into the number of pages in this book is actually, I think, the longest Hunger Games story, if I'm remembering correctly. It clocks in at about a whopping 517 pages. So yeah, it is quite a thick book to get through. It took me about a month to get through the entirety of this book. So yeah, just keep that in mind if you're thinking about picking it up and reading it. So a little overview about this book. This book is laid out in 3 parts, just like all the other Hunger Games books in the Hunger Games series. So the first part mainly covers introductory stuff. So it introduces Coriolanus Snow and, you know, basically introduces what his life is like in the Capitol, how he interacts with his family, with his friends and classmates, and with his professors and teachers. And it just basically sets up the story and introduces all the characters and, you know, sets you up for the rest of the book. So it is a really slow start, but things do kind of pick up maybe after Chapter 7, if I'm remembering correctly. Probably more so Chapter 5, though. But yeah, it is a really slow start in the beginning, and then you get into Part 2, and that is where you get into the 10th Hunger Games, which is the Hunger Games that this book covers. And all throughout the 10th Hunger Games, that is basically all of Part 2. It just talks about the Hunger Games and how Coriolanus helps his tribute to survive in the games and to try and win the games. And pretty interesting stuff, you know. Most of the action in this book probably has to do with Part 2. There is some in Part 3, but I think most of it, in terms of at least the Hunger Games, is mostly in Part 2. And then Part 3 is sort of the aftermath of the Hunger Games, what happens in them, and just Coriolanus kind of turning into the President Snow that we remember from the Hunger Games trilogy, and just kind of starting that path towards becoming the cruel president that we see in the original Hunger Games trilogy. So yeah, really interesting layout of the book. There is also a tribute that Coriolanus has to help named Lucy Gray, and he is her mentor, and he just basically forms a relationship with her throughout this book. I won't go too heavy into what type of relationship. Just know that it's an interesting one. So yeah. So overall, my thoughts. I did not know much about this book going into it. I didn't really follow it when it was announced, and as soon as I saw it in bookstores after it was released, I think I got it a week after its initial release date, and I picked it up, thought the cover looked interesting, and just bought it and wanted to read it. I wanted to see, because the only thing I really knew about this book was that it was a prequel, so I really kind of wanted to see just what it was about, like what it would cover, and I wasn't really disappointed. I think the fact that I didn't really know what was going on with this book kind of helped, and which is probably why I liked it. Really all I knew was what I read from the description here, so that's basically all I knew about this book. So going into it, I really did not have any information. Of course, I do have some background information about the Hunger Games universe. I did read the original trilogy of books, so I wasn't really a big fan of the Hunger Games, and I wouldn't say that this book made me more of a fan. It's just kind of a fun series that I like to read, just interesting. They're good books. I don't know. I'm not really a big Hunger Games fan. I really just kind of wanted to read this to learn a little bit more about the origin of the Hunger Games, and I got some information, but this book isn't really about that. It's more about Coriolanus Snow and a specific moment in his life as a teenager. So that's really all I knew going into this book. Now, rating the characters in this book, there wasn't really any characters that annoyed me throughout this book. I think every character was pretty interesting in their own way. There's a lot of interesting characters in this book. You got Coriolanus Snow, who is the main character in this book. We've got Lucy Gray, who is the tribute he mentors. He's got his friends and classmates at the Capitol. We do have a student that he becomes acquaintances with named Sejanus Plinth. I hope I am saying that name right. But yeah, he is a member of the Capitol. He is one of Coriolanus's classmates and technically his friend, I guess. You'll know if you've read the book, but yeah, they're really more acquaintances, but pretty close acquaintances. And he's kind of an interesting character because he comes from the districts, and he, through his parents, becomes a Capitol youth. So that's a pretty interesting character right there. Yeah, I wasn't really annoyed by any of the characters. So the plot itself, I kind of thought it was going to go more into like the formation of the Hunger Games, but it actually starts during the 10th Hunger Games, and it gives some information about how the games kind of evolved into what it is in the original Hunger Games trilogy, and I thought that was kind of interesting. But other than that, it's really more about Coriolanus and how he is as a person, and just his struggle in trying to become a higher up in the Capitol society, and it just kind of goes through his internal conflict, his choices that he's forced to make, and his thoughts about the Hunger Games and stuff. And it's really more of a character study, I would say. It's not really an origin story for the Hunger Games or his rise to power as a villain. It's just kind of an interesting look into his life as a teenager, and just kind of shows you what kind of led him to become the vicious president that he becomes. Well, I wouldn't say vicious, but the jerky president that he becomes later on in the series. So yeah, the plot, pretty interesting, kind of a slow start, but if you get through the first couple of chapters, the first few chapters, you'll really the book really does start to pick up, and you'll become more invested in it as you read on. But yeah, so the plot, pretty good. Not the best Hunger Games book, but definitely not the worst, in my opinion at least. So in terms of ranking with the other Hunger Games books, I would say my least favorite is probably Mockingjay. I didn't really like the ending of that story, and I kind of wished that a little more information was given about the aftermath of everything that happened in that series. So that book didn't really provide me with that, so that's why I would rank that as the last The next book in the series I'd probably say would be this one. Not to say that it's bad, all these books are really good in their own way. This one I think was definitely more my speed. I don't know, I just really liked it for some reason. And then probably the first Hunger Games book, and then my all-time favorite is probably Catching Fire, because a lot of interesting stuff happens in that book. I won't give it away though, you'll have to read it for yourself. So yeah, who would I recommend and who wouldn't I recommend this book to? I'd recommend this book to Hunger Games fans, definitely. If you've read the other books, why wouldn't you want to read more about the universe? So yeah, I definitely recommend it to Hunger Games fans. And I definitely think this book should definitely be the last read. I would probably recommend the original trilogy first before reading this book, because like I said, this book is a lot slower than the original trilogy. It's not as exciting as the original trilogy, but it is pretty interesting in its own way, in its own weird, unique way. But yeah, so Hunger Games fans, I definitely recommend it. It's really more catered to sort of the teenage demographic, so they are probably the best ballpark. I think adults will enjoy it just fine, and kids probably won't even get through the first few chapters. But yeah, it just really depends on your level of interest with the Hunger Games books. So yeah, I also wouldn't recommend it to Hunger Games fans, because this book is actually quite polarizing from what I've read from reviews online. It's definitely splitting the Hunger Games fandom down the middle. People are saying it's okay, people are saying it's the worst book in the series. I'm really more towards the people that say it's okay. So yeah, take that information as you will. But for those of you that have read this book, let me know in the comments down below what you guys thought of it. Did you guys enjoy it, or did you absolutely hate it? But other than that, that's basically it for this video. That's basically my thoughts on this book. It's not really so much of a review. I'm probably going to say this is a spoiler-free review. I'll probably make a little disclaimer at the beginning, but yeah, I definitely enjoyed this book, and I definitely like to talk about it. So yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. And of course, as I was editing this video, I realized I forgot to show you guys what this looks like without the little dust sleeve. So once you take this off, you basically get the golden bird and snake emblem against a green background. And then the spine is pretty much the same, but in all gold. And the back, there's nothing. But yeah, I really like this. I really like the way it looks. I think it looks pretty nice, the way the green and the gold complement each other. But yeah, that's basically it. So if you guys made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next book review video. Later.